Welcome to the Communication Diva Podcast, episode 134. Today on the podcast, Jen interviews Marilyn Wilson, a freelance writer and speaker with a passion for interviewing. The podcast is entitled, When Existing Doors Aren't Opening, Make Your Own. Just like Kool-Aid Man. Oh yeah.
Welcome to the Communication Diva Podcast, where I help you to get the job, love your work, and advance your career. And today I am with Marilyn R. Wilson, who is an author, and she does so many things. I don't want to put a whole bunch of labels on her, but I want to say welcome, Marilyn, and I'm so glad you're here today.
I think this is so great that it just kind of fell into our laps, and we've got a chance to catch up, and now we get to talk on your podcast. This is really exciting.
I've interviewed Marilyn before when she was first publishing the first edition of her book, Life Outside the Box, on a different podcast that I was hosting at the time, but I haven't had you here on Communication Diva, so I'm really excited that we got to have lunch and then come downstairs and do this in the studio.
Food and conversation. Perfect.
That's fabulous. So Marilyn, tell us how it is that you've come to be doing what you're doing now, because you've been doing a lot of things.
I've been doing a lot of things. Growing up, I was always incredibly drawn to the stories of other people. Like I was we would call it nosy as a child. It was not welcome, but I was always very fascinated. So when it came time to pick a career, I decided it had to be psychology. And I was going to go out and make people's lives better and make everybody happy and life would be good. And I made it all the way to about a third of the way through my master's in counseling and drug abuse. And I had a professor that was also working in the field. And one night he decided to give us all a wake-up call, and he talked about his last year. He'd had 2 suicides. Oh. He had a father that was having sexual feelings for his teenager that had not done anything, so it was still in-house. And marriage and family child counseling, which was where I was headed at the time, had a 5% success rate.
Wow.
I finished the semester and I walked away. I realized, I thought I was going to be in this very positive bubble, making people smile and taking the weight off their shoulders. And instead, I was going to be in this very negative bubble. And I just didn't feel that I could survive that going home every day. I wouldn't leave it at the office. So it took me almost 20 years to get to a new place. And I worked and I married and I had kids. I moved to Canada. And one day my kids were teenagers and didn't need me. I'm ADD, I'm really intense, and the message was back off. So I sat down on Craigslist and said, what could I do now after being out of the job force like this? And I saw an ad for writing for a fashion magazine in New York. Now, I knew nothing about fashion. My husband cut my hair. I bought my clothes at Zellers in Value Village, and my shoes came from Pay and Save. But I thought, writing, how hard could this be? I know a couple designers. This will be fine. And that opened the door. I got 2 articles accepted, and at my first interview, here was somebody telling me their whole life story. Willingly. I wasn't nosy. I was a welcome person. I was there to listen. I had goosebumps throughout the entire 2 hours. I knew this is what I wanted to do, was interview. And to interview, I had to write. So the journey to writing was not as easy. The first magazine folded. No one would hire me. It took a long time to learn the skills. Just because you have good English doesn't mean you write good articles. And over this time of the next year, trying to open a door, trying to figure out somebody to hire me, nobody wanted me. I was 50 years old. I had no experience in the industry. The articles I'd done for this magazine didn't get published because they folded.
Oh, no.
They ran out of money. And I was unwanted. I was old. I was a mother. And so I had to find another way to do it. So I went back to Craigslist and posted, I regret part of this. I just want to write. I know a few people in the fashion magazine, and I don't care if I get paid. I think that was just about all I said.
You put an ad out yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just put it out there,
Wow.
and there was a photographer who wanted to start a digital fashion magazine locally. All he wanted was to be able to put photos out there. So I met with him, and I ended up co-owning the magazine. It didn't start out quite that way, but I came in and said, I want to cover students and I want to write people's stories. I don't want to cover trends and makeup and all that. And he says, okay, that's fine as long as I get to shoot. So that's what our magazine was. It was a fashion magazine that covered people working in our industry. I did up to 5 interviews and articles a month at the start because all the other writers kept dropping out. And then I started working with Rain in New York and interviewing people from London and South Africa. And it just continued to grow. One day I got really overwhelmed and bored and said, everything I'm writing is the same. And somebody said, well, start a blog and write whatever you want on it. So that's how my blog Olio by Marilyn started out.
That's Olio?
Yeah, like a melange.
I see.
So there I started to pour stories about my family and stories about throwing up and stories about anything I could think of, a word of a day, just to stretch my writing. It's grown quite a bit, and it's now become more of a regular. It covers very specific things because I'm busy. So over the course of all this, I was learning in the public eye. I didn't have the right clothes to be in the fashion industry. I knew nothing about the designers. I was so excited at the start, I didn't know it. I didn't know I didn't fit in. And then one day I turned around and it began to dawn on me that I really was lacking the credentials most people did. So that was another journey to recognizing what I do is unique and it was okay. Mm-hmm. And I was working in the space I needed to work from, even though it may not have been traditional. So my magazine ended up folding one day. My partner and I, a Craigslist partnership is not built on solid foundation. And one day it came crashing down, and I think I went into a depression for 6 months because who's going to let me hear their stories now?
Right.
Nobody's going to want me. And I had a few friends that supported me, and I wrote on my blog for a bit and finally said, okay, I'm going to find another opportunity. I've got to find another door. And so I went on a total whim. I went to a women's networking thing and heard Julie from Influence Publishing talk about publishing and how to do it and her workshops. And I said, okay, that's the next door. So I did a workshop. I went through my 150 interviews over 8 years that I've accumulated and came out with 7 I wanted to write on. I did 3 more interviews, and it took me 18 months of soul-searching, crying, self-doubt, agony, and I managed to write a book with 10 mini bios in it.
And that was Life Outside the Box.
That was Life Outside the Box. I launched it. I'm Leo, the late bloomer. It released, my launch party was 5 days after I turned 60. So I found my passion at 49. Mm-hmm. I launched my first book at 60. Here I am 2 years later getting ready to launch my second. But not once did... This came home, and we were talking about this earlier, came home this week. I saw a video about the guy who founded Alibaba because he kept getting no for years. And then he founded Alibaba, and he's very rich now. And I think what it said to me was... you have to create your own opportunity. We keep thinking we just head in this direction and the doors are going to open, and that's not what happened for me. 15 years being a stay-at-home mom, no experience in the industry I wanted to go into. Nobody was saying, Marilyn, we've been waiting for you. Where have you been? The industry is very young. Mm-hmm. I had a hard time fitting in. There was a lot of self-doubt. So you have to really love what you do. But if you know you're supposed to head a direction, sometimes you have to get, especially as you get older, really, really creative with finding a way to pursue your passion. And you have to understand sometimes it takes a very long time for it to be really lucrative financially. Mm-hmm. I'm still working on that. It's just starting to come together after a decade for me. I'm fortunate my husband had a good job and has been able to carry us. But it's so important to be willing to think outside the box and to make your opportunity instead of waiting for it to come to you. If I'd waited, I would still be sitting at home on Craigslist going, maybe I'll try this time, because nobody wanted me. They want me 10 years down the road, but back then, nobody wanted me.
Right. And so, I'm friends with you on Facebook as well, and I have seen photo after photo after photo of this incredibly fashionable woman dressed in spectacular clothing with your hair all done just fabulously. And you totally fit in.
I didn't at the start.
Right.
I found one of my interviews with a local fashion designer who had clothing for women that was a bit older, and I worked with one of her stylists in studio and bought a few clothes every season for 8 seasons, 4 years to build a wardrobe. I looked so bad at the start that they were horrified. They asked me to come in and practice with a camera in the salon because my pictures were so bad at events. I'm not photogenic. I know my angles and I've learned how to dress, but I had to have somebody show me. Somebody picked my glasses for me. I have a hairdresser who tells me what I should do with my hair, and I have to trust those people. And over time, I've learned. But when I started out, I grew up poor. And when I started in the fashion industry, my husband was still giving me a blunt cut hair with a pair of old scissors.
Wow.
I was getting my stuff at Value Village. Nothing fit me right.
Right.
It was, how much did it cost? We had no money.
But how courageous of you to launch yourself into through Craigslist, no less, to launch yourself into a totally new world, and then to adapt and adopt it, and
it wasn't courage. I'm very ADD and I'm very impulsive, and I leap into the unknown willingly and happily without thinking, and then I really struggle to swim.
But at least you leap.
Oh, I leap, but that's my impulsivity. I am really, really good at leaping. What I'm not good is just kind of peeking to see where I'm going to land first. And so there were many mornings I threw up when I woke up, just overwhelmed, thinking I wouldn't make it. I was so excited after being home for 15 years with kids to be out. I was actually oblivious that I didn't fit in.
And isn't that good?
It was good. But somewhere a year and a half down the road, when the newness wore off and I was asked to step out of a picture so they could get the young people, I started to really lose confidence. I had a really hard time. And fortunately, one of my young friends in the industry sat me down and said, "What's wrong? I used to feel your energy and now you're just fading." And we talked a long time about it. And I came to the realization that I'm here because I'm meant to be here. I have the skills I need. I have to quit browbeating myself. And so I actually, it's in my new book coming out, but there is a chapter about what I had to do. Before every event, I would get quiet. I would remind myself why I was invited to go, what my job was, and had I done it before, what skills was I capable. And then I would go in my closet, which somebody had helped me build, so I had nice options that fit me, and pick whatever felt right that night for the role I was going to play. And I would step into that role. Tonight I'm going to cover event as media. Tonight I'm going to be a mentor to, so what is my reason for being there? And I would dress the part and I would put the makeup on, and all the way there I would think about this, and I did okay. It started to improve again. And after a while that became internalized. Now I don't question myself, albeit there are still times I go home and I go, "Oh, Marilyn, did you really?" There's still a 17-year-old inside of me, ADD person with foot and mouth, ready to leap out. And so I still do go home sometimes and say, "Geez, I could have been a little more professional there." But I think I really had to have a long talk with myself and remind myself of how far I'd come. How hard I'd work, and that I'd earn my stripes, that I'm there because they respect me as a professional. And once I changed the inner dialogue, it got better.
And the reason I mentioned courage earlier is because I was on Facebook this morning, and there was someone that was was working on creating this product and hadn't quite taken that first step of actually doing it.
Yeah.
And I think I'm maybe a little bit more like you in that I just barrel through and do it and then figure it out as I go. Yeah. It's like, oh, dang, now I've got to figure out, am I doing it right? Am I doing, but I do just jump in and do it. But there are a lot of people that that is terrifying. It's terrifying to them to jump in. So they'll spend all sorts of time learning about all the things they can possibly learn about, spending a lot of money learning about all the things. And you can get paralyzed in the learning and the consuming of information without ever taking that first step. So when you said, you're talking about the Alibaba guy, and you said, if there's no door there for you to walk through, sometimes you have to make your own door.
Yes.
I think that's brilliant, because that's obviously what you did.
Well, a decade in the industry, and I'm 62 years old, and that idea just came this last week. So I call myself Leo the late bloomer. I think there is a balance between jumping the way I do with no thought, because I never had the confidence on the follow through. I didn't sleep. I would sweat my way through. I did it the hard way. Mm-hmm. And on the other extreme is somebody who's afraid to leap at all until they're sure it's safe. There's a happy medium where you leap towards opportunities with the confidence, and, embracing the confidence that you will be able to walk through this, because the leap would come, and then the brain would kick in. What are you doing? You don't know what you're doing. And then I would freeze trying to finish an article. I would freeze trying to, it really is just one step in front of the other. And that's come to me so much in working with Sue Dumais of Heart-Led Living, is that all I'm required to do is say, where does it feel like I should head today? Okay, here's one step. Here's another step. Here's another step. You don't have to look at the whole day, because then I panic. I'll never get it all done, and then I don't get it all done. So I do have, there is that leaping has been a really good thing for me. I've had great opportunities, but it's gotten me in a few situations where I truly was drowning in the public eye. And it's very, somewhere there you have to temper that leap with a little bit of confidence that it will come. It's okay. One step. All I have to do is one step, and then the next step. So I'm on the extreme of leaping, and so I would like to back off just that little bit so I can be a little more calm on my follow through.
And your follow through. Well, and that the fashion industry, my goodness, it is in the public eye, and it's all about image. So,
and it's about youth.
So that I don't know, bravery still comes into it somehow.
But I have continued to tell people I have been labeled a fashion writer, and that is not true. I have never been a fashion writer. I am interested in people and their life journeys.
And their stories.
I want to know what you were like, and what led you, like myself, what led you from that small child up. I know why I love interviewing. As a small child, I sucked up people's stories like crazy. Unfortunately, I also repeated them. But I have always loved to hear unique stories, people who've lived differently than me, people who think differently than me. That turns my clock. I get goosebumps through the whole thing. So being in the fashion world is one type. Fortunately for my book, I think I only have 3 in the fashion industry. I have a spoken word poet, I have a dancer, I have a charity founder, I have a publisher. Each of those stories are really unique. One of my favorite interviews was a random one. I was on the subway in New York, and I sat down. I'd been at an event. I had my digital recorder, and I looked at the man next to me, and I said, "What do you do?" He said, "I repair elevators." And I said, "We got 5 stops. Let's go." And he told me about his life, and he told me about working on elevator in 5 stops.
Did you record all this?
Yes. I mean, we didn't cover a lot, but I mean, it was exciting. Some of the best stories are with somebody next to you that doesn't have big credits and a big Facebook presence. The most amazing, interesting stories swirl around you all the time. All you have to do is ask.
So there's so many questions that I have running around, swirling around my brain right about now.
And we have another 2 minutes, right?
Yeah, no, we don't. We have more than that. I'm thinking of the people that are listening and thinking about, career changing and career advancement. And I know there are some listeners, because they've let me know, who are in situations where they're bored, they're tired, they've been doing the same job for, X number of years, or they want to begin work because they've been at home for a long time. And so I'm just thinking about, each person has a story, and And how do you live into that and not try and make yourself someone you're not when you're looking to advance your career or to change career or to jump into Craigslist? Like, how do you do that? I see so many people inventing themselves on social media and inventing themselves, not being authentic, I think is what I'm trying to say. And so how do you take what you've got already and put that towards what you're going to do next?
I'm overwhelmed by that question. I'm fortunate that for me, I've always just been me. I grew up in a situation I didn't feel good in. Instead of trying to conform, I threw it out there. This is who I am, like me or not. So I think that journey has been easier for me. How to know what to do. I find a lot of people rebrand themselves in their 40s in particular because they began to understand what they feel is missing. What did you love all your life? That doesn't mean it should be a job. Some things are meant to be hobbies and sidelines. But you have to be so open to everything around you. And this ties in a bit with my second book, which is going to come out hopefully in September. It's called The Wisdom of Listening, Pieces of Gold from a Decade of Interviewing. And what I did was through all those interviews, people kept giving me little pieces of wisdom, pieces of gold they're carrying in their pocket. I gave them back as well. The more you interact with people and the more you talk with people around you, ask what they do, share what you do, have these very organic conversations with people, you start to understand there's more careers than doctor, lawyer, office worker, accountant. There are people out there doing incredible things, and they're not in the news. And they don't have a big website. But the more you communicate with people, ask them about their life, what they're doing, the more ideas that come your way. And then you just have to start trying things. I don't think there's, for most people, a big life-changing moment. There was for me. That interview was a religious experience. But it didn't become a career right away. I knew this is what I wanted to do, and it's taking me a long time to find a way where this is going to be a financially lucrative thing. So the more people you talk to, the more you share, the more you listen, the more you take in, the more you give back. Make that a regular part of your life. Find out what people are doing. Where are they working? What makes their clock tick? How do they volunteer? And then see if something gives you goosebumps. I'm very fortunate. I also get goosebumps. When something hits me between the eyes, I've had them twice during our conversation now. And that's a physical thing with me. I respond. And then I know I'm supposed to do something with it. So everybody's different, but I think the more you know about what people do and the wider variety you're exposed to, I think that's going to help you start to get an idea of where you might head. It really is one foot in front of the other. There is no right place to be at. You just have to start moving a direction. And if that way sort of turns out not so good, then you turn a little to the right or the left and start walking that direction. You begin to move forward with your eyes open, looking for opportunity and listening to what other people do and making those personal connections. I do think, and I've heard this many, many times, in this job market, personal connections are huge. And I think that's true about finding where you should head in a job change. I think the more connections you make, the more wide you cast your net in terms of who you're around, the more ideas you're exposed to, the easier it'll be to start to head in a new direction. But sometimes you got to head in a new direction for a while before you figure out where it's taken you.
What it is that you want to do. Yeah, I like the idea of having those conversations, and the doors open when you do that, and sometimes someone will know someone who knows someone who's looking for someone, or is doing a job that you might be excited about that you'd never ever heard of before.
Well, you've given me ideas too, and I haven't had time to come up on them, but one of them you talked about the chef's table. Mm-hmm. And you said I could see your book being those chapters being a show, but about people
Right.
along that format. And I haven't had a chance to pursue that yet. At the same time, that's an idea that's tucked in. If I'm not doing that direction, if time opens up, maybe I should look into this direction. People give me ideas all the time, and they want me to embrace them right away. Instead, I write them down, I
Right.
tuck them away, because in another 5 years, do I want to be doing what I'm doing? Most likely not. I want to grow and I want to change and stretch myself. I've been doing this over 10 years now. So everybody around me offers me ideas. That doesn't mean I have to do them now, but they go into my well of idea well. And so at the right time, something bubbles up. But you have to keep shoving stuff in there. It takes a lot of ideas before one starts to cook. Like soup. It's got to be cooked. But I think it's that, like, I headed off into writing by answering a Craigslist ad because I wanted to interview, not because I wanted to be a writer. I had no idea at that time it would take me into publishing 2 books. I had no idea it would end up leading me to do SEO for Eco Fashion Week in Australia and being offered a free plane ticket there. I had no idea, one step after another, as I moved through this, what the destination will be. And I still don't know. We've got to let go of the destination and we've got to just enjoy the ride, because I think there's more help out there for us than we know. I think we're surrounded by people ready to help us. I think we're surrounded by interesting people in line at the coffee and in the grocery store. I talk to everybody. And 90% of the time they die off. And then every once in a while, I'm ready to go get a coffee and pull out the recorder, because what they're telling me is so profound. It's what I needed to hear. But if you're not casting your net, you're not going to draw any of this stuff to you. So I guess I just have to say, get out of your box, take some classes, do something, go to a meetup group. Put yourself around people you're not normally around and share and get their story and ask them questions. See if anything comes up for you. There'll be ideas, and just start writing those ideas down until something starts to become clear.
It's that exploration. Yeah, we have a chair making noise, but that's okay.
I got to quit gesturing with my hands.
That's okay. So Life Outside the Box was a collection of 10 stories. Of people's lives, and that came from all those hundreds of interviews that you did and that you wrote. And then your book that's coming out is more. How would you classify that? The wisdom of listening, pieces of gold from a decade of interviews.
I'm laughing because I said when I wrote this, it was such a delight. It takes me like 18 months of self-doubt and labor to do what I do usually, because I have to interview, I have to transcribe, then I have to try to capture their story in their voice. So one day I was frustrated. It had been 2 years. I was stalled out on book 2, and I was in this little meditation group, and the idea came just to take a break.
You were going to do a second book of interviews.
It's in fact, it's already started.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So I went downstairs and thought, I'll just lay out this book. It was a passion project because people keep telling me the most amazing ideas, such as the idea of Ujama, and I don't think we probably have time to go into that, but I'm going to anyways.
Okay.
Ujama is a day in Kwanzaa that talks about a village coming together to raise each other up as a village equally. So when I've got goosebumps. When I heard this, it changed how I did business and who was my friends. I began to look for relationships in business and in my personal life where we benefited each other, we were not in competition, and our goal was to raise each other up equally. And that was so that's just one of many, many, many things. And all of these pieces of gold began to walk me through my self-doubt, help lead me towards self-acceptance, help me in mentoring others. And so I just wanted to write them down. I didn't know if I had a whole book or not. So I went downstairs, I laid out the book, I laid out some chapter titles, and an hour later I had 2,000 words written.
Good heavens.
And in 2.5 weeks I'd written the whole book.
2.5 weeks?
2.5 weeks I'd written the whole book. Now, that's vomiting on paper. That is not clean, but I had everything down on paper in 2.5 weeks, and then it stalled out in edit. I used to love the editing process. What I have discovered, when it's my personal words about my personal life, it's a little more threatening. But it came from one lady who was an artist who had come up with a terrible background and a lot of violence and managed not be on the street, but really struggled. And she found that painting her art helped her heal. And from that, she said, I realized art was a piece of gold I carried in my pocket that I could help others to heal. And she founded a art charity for women in the downtown east side, which is a depressed area, to help
Vancouver.
Yeah, to help bring their some joy and some self-acceptance into their life. And so I like that concept. So this has been in the back of my mind for a long time. And it was such a gratifying thing to have words, your own words, just pour out of you. So I am not a self-help guru. This tells a little bit of my journey. It really hopefully will bring you to a place of self-acceptance that diversity is a good thing, that diversity around you is a good thing, that you are meant to share your pieces of gold and that you're meant to get them from others. And it's not just self-help gurus. It's really just all around you every day. So I'm really excited about this book coming out. I still have to do the cover art and finish the editing. So I'm guessing September sometime.
September 2017.
But it's super easy to read. Like my first book. My first book is 10 individual chapters. So you could read a chapter and put it down for 9 months. This one, I went with super short chapters. I based it on a book called Giving Candy to Strangers, which I really like. And the chapters are a page and a half each. So they're just sound bites. You can just sit down with a cup of coffee and take 1 or 2 sound bites and walk around with that idea for the next week if you want. So I'm hoping people will get from it what I did, is just permission to be yourself, permission to step outside of the box of expectations on who should be your friends and how you should do business and what your job is. And more than anything, I hope in this time where we seem to be dividing lines, I think my final chapter really is on celebrating diversity and the beauty of it. I mean, we weren't all created alike. We were meant to be a wild, wonderful kaleidoscope. And we're meant to come together as a village and to raise each other up. And I'm getting teary-eyed. I don't know why. But this is so important.
Beautiful.
Because I grew up in a very strict environment. I just think it's so important that we learn to hold hands and come together in a place of acceptance. And from there, in the sharing, I think that's where we get guidance of where we're supposed to go. We're not alone. You're not alone.
I want to say, preach it, sister.
I know. I get in these moods and it happens.
That's great. Well, what piece of advice do you have for the people out there?
I really, 2 quick things.
Yeah.
One of them is just, for me, it was very difficult to love myself because I was ADD, my mind raced, a foot and mouth disease. I didn't fit into the girly role. I was not sugar and spice and everything nice. I wasn't even puppy dog tails. So it took me till I was in my 50s to realize I'm good at what I do now because of who I am exactly. So you are the way you are for a reason. And if it's causing you grief, it's because you haven't found your purpose yet. Your purpose will use all the pieces of you in a positive way, not a negative way. So that's the first one. That's the thing it took me the longest time to learn. And the second one is a quote I give all the time. William Orlowski was in my first book, dancer who was really sidelined terribly by dystonia, really had a tough time coming back. He did pass away last year, broke my heart. I interviewed him about 3 times and asked for advice I phrased this question like 20 different ways and he always gave me the same answer. And so this is my motto now. There is no secret, just do and be brave. So I most mornings I try to start my day with that because really there is no secret. You just one step in front of another, just do and be brave.
Now you got me all teary.
Oh, that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. Marilyn, it's been a delight. Thank you
you
so much for sharing your passion and all that you do with the Communication
Great.
Diva audience. And I look forward to reading this next book when it comes out. And where can people find you?
You know, the best thing is always just to go to my website. It's www.marilynrwilson.com. On there is a link, Oleo by Marilyn, that takes you to my blog. There's another one that has my current book on and where you can buy it. I'll put links there on my second book. I'm a lot of places right now, but that kind of is the central location for all knowledge.
Fabulous. And if people want to connect with you, they can connect with you there.
Absolutely. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram. I have big accounts. I'm pretty easy to find.
Well, thanks again. It's been fabulous.
All right. Thanks so much.
My interview with Marilyn R. Wilson, author of Life Outside the Box and of the upcoming book that will come out in September of 2017, The Wisdom of Listening, Pieces of Gold from a Decade of Interviewing. I hope you enjoyed that. I know that we had sat and had lunch together before that interview, and we could have kept talking all afternoon. She's just such an interesting person, and I hope you enjoyed that and that you will reach out and read her blog and see what she's up to. I'll put all of the links on the show notes at communicationdiva.com. Also, this is our last week of our giveaway contest where you can win a copy of the soon-to-be launched interview course on how to ace a job interview if you haven't interviewed in a long time. I've been getting great reviews from my beta testers, and the course will be launching and will be open for registration for 1 week at the end of July 31st to August 7th. And if you leave a review on iTunes of the Communication Diva podcast and then let me know that you did that, your name will go into a draw and you could win a free copy of this $149 course. That's the price, the introductory price. And you can keep that for yourself, or you can give it away to someone who is needing to brush up on their interview skills. So that is all I have for you this week. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And until next time, just keep paying attention to those opportunities and keep your eyes open, because you never know what doors might be waiting for you, and you never know when you will have the opportunity to make your own door. This is Jen Swanson. Talk soon.